You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Good evening, good morning, good night, and good afternoon to you, dear Pan-African Daily TV family, followers, fans, and well-wishers, wherever you're joining us. We want to welcome you to this special edition on the Pan-African Daily TV on this Friday evening. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here in the company of the Caribbeans, and tonight we want to focus first ever Africa Caribbean Summit that just took place on September 7, last Tuesday, a historic event which we have already been making a lot of noise about it. I want to thank all of you that are joining. As we all said, it is a historical moment, and not just only that, for the first time in history that we have this kind of direct connection, mainland and its diaspora, and we intend to see a lot of this happenings in the near future with the start and the initiation of CARICOM. Right now in studio, we have His Excellency Ambassador David Comissiong, who is going to give us a general overview. What is the Caribbean? I mean, our people on the mainland are still not getting it straight to understand that the Caribbean is actually inhabited by our enslaved brothers and sisters 400 to 500 years ago. And so most often we debate on the issue of when you see a person of color or a black person or African everywhere, they start naming them. He's from Jamaica, he's from Antigua, he's from Barbados, he's from Barbuda, he's from Dominica, he's from America. But less do they know on the continent that, these are one people. These are our families, and like I can see, like in the Caribbean, particularly in the Antigua and Barbados, I think these are mostly Cameroonians that came from West Africa, and particularly Cameroon. I see the futures, I see even the language and even the food and most of the things. So you see, you're sitting with your brothers out there, relatives, and of course they're your relatives, come from your very families, but you never had any connection and any contact. That's how insane the whole slave trade and colonization process and the breakup and disenfranchisement of our people and our continent has been for the past 5-6 decades, as we can say. But today, for the first time, we are seeing the reconnection and the unity, and starting with this very important curriculum that actually, like I can say, opened the gateway, invited the continent, or there have been some exchanges or whatever relation that is taken us so far. We are so thankful. We are thankful that at least something is beginning. At least we are beginning to reconnect. It doesn't matter whether even we make the little start or the first steps, but we are already there. So I want to thank all of you that will be joining this conversation today. Today, we want to talk about, like I said, the first ever summit, Africa Caribbean, summit that took place virtually, but eventually we think face-to-face and contacts would have to follow. Thank you, His Excellency, for joining us on this program. I want to welcome you for the first day. It's a pleasure to have somebody of your noble caliber, not just in terms of handsome that you are a brother, but of course your information, we had very, very positive feedbacks. I mean, the Caribbeans, just like you just touched the right person. We had comments coming even from Ethiopia, all right, and on the Caribbean islands, on the continent in Africa, as if you really, and some people even refer to you, that is the PLO Lumumba in the Caribbean. I mean, when I saw this, when I saw these comments, I was like, wow, how come maybe it was just only not me that haven't had that access to you? So tell us more about you, His Excellency. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Tata. It's a real pleasure to be here speaking to our brothers and sisters all across Europe, I guess, this afternoon in Barbados. Well, a little bit about me. I am perhaps what you would call the quintessential Caribbean person. I was actually born in St. Vincent and the Grenadines,
Oh.
but I have went to school in Trinidad and Tobago, in Barbados, and I've been in Barbados since 1971. And I am currently Barbados's ambassador to the Caribbean Community, which is an organization of 15 Caribbean states. I'm also the Barbados's ambassador to the Association of Caribbean States, which is a broader organization of 25 Caribbean states, not just the islands, but also the mainland territories that abut on the Caribbean Sea. A little bit about myself. I am an attorney at law by profession. I've practiced law for many, many years, but I've been a Pan-Africanist from the commencement of my public career. So I've been involved in most of the Pan-Africanist formations and developments in the Caribbean ever since the mid 1980s, I would say. And I'm currently chairperson of the Caribbean Pan-African Network. That's a pan-Caribbean civil society organization that we established in the year 2004 in collaboration with the African Union. You know, the African Union has this sixth region diaspora initiative where they conceive of the diaspora as the sixth region of Africa. And in 2004, representatives of the African Union joined forces with us in the Caribbean, and we established this Caribbean Pan-African Network as the entity that would represent the Caribbean civil society in the African Union. So I've been very involved in the African Union's Economic, Social, and Cultural Council, and in the Citizens and Diaspora Department of the African Union. But since 2018, I have been Barbados's ambassador, and yes, so the Caribbean. So what we are seeing unfold is an effort by the heads of government of the Caribbean community and the African Union to come together. In the past, we have had comings together in the past, but it has been at the level of activists. For example, you know, we have had 7 Pan-African Congresses. The Pan-African Congresses began in the year 1900. And the idea of the Pan-African Congress back then, we were virtually all colonies of Europe. The only independent countries we had in the year 1900 was Haiti in the Caribbean, Liberia in West Africa, and Ethiopia, which had really never been conquered. So back in 1900, when we started with the first Pan-African Congress, it was really activists coming together from the United States, the Caribbean, Africa, and Africans in Europe. And Henry Sylvester Williams, Trinidadian, Barbadian, of Barbadian ancestry, he was the driving force behind the first Pan-African Congress that was held in London in 1900. Thereafter, W.B. Du Bois from the United States of America, he took up the mantle Of course, Marcus Garvey from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, he also was organizing an African organization, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. But perhaps the most famous Pan-African Congress of them all was the Fifth Pan-African Congress that was held in 1945 in Manchester, England, the city of Manchester in England. And that brought together the nationalist leaders of that period. So we are talking Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya, George Padmore of the Caribbean. So that Congress was very important because these leaders came together in that early nationalist period and decided collectively, leaders from the Caribbean and Africa, decided collectively that the next phase of the Pan-African movement was going to be the struggle for decolonization, the struggle for independence. And Kwame Nkrumah went off to Ghana, Jomo Kenyatta went off to Kenya, and the rest is history. That decolonial struggle was very successful. By 1960, we had so many independent African countries. By 1962, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago got their independence in the Caribbean. And we went on from there to establish not only independent countries, but to establish on the African continent the Organization of African Unity in 1963. And in the Caribbean, we established the Caribbean Free Trade Association in 1968, and then the Caribbean Community. That evolved into the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, in 1973. So we have that history. We have that history of Pan-Africanism. But as strange as it may sound, the Organization of African Unity was established in 1963. Our CORIFTA and CARICOM were established thereafter in the Caribbean. But yet, we never had this very specific coming together of the heads of government of Africa and the Caribbean to sit down around the table, to talk to each other, to agree upon ways of working together, to agree upon an agenda for the present and the future. And that is what happened a few days ago on the 7th of September 2021. So that's the significance of this event. It is not activists coming together. It is heads of government bringing their nations together and bringing their multilateral organizations, the African Union and the Caribbean Community, together. That's the significance of it.
Wow. I mean, yeah, this is very important because we were thinking, but where has this been? His Excellency, can you tell us why this gap? What was the issue?
It's just amazing to me when you think about it. Why didn't we think about coming together before? I don't know how you explain it. I mean, yes, we have been together. For example, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, the so-called ACP, back in the early 1970s, when the former colonies of Europe, when Europe was coming together, Europe had formed its common market. The former colonies of Europe in Africa, the Caribbean, and Pacific then had to negotiate an agreement, a trade agreement with the European Common Market. And because of that, we came together in something called the ACP, African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. But that was just something brought together for us to carry out negotiations with Europe. That wasn't our own organization. That was a contrivance to talk to Europe. Now, since then, very recently, just last year, what we did, we decided, look, it's not good enough just to have this ACP just to speak to Europe. Let us form it into a real organization, and give it its own identity and its own agenda. So we now have an organization called the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, and it has a headquarters in Brussels. So it's the OCAPS. It's a very new organization. It was only inaugurated last year. So that does exist, and we now have to build that. But what we had on the 7th of September, this is even more significant than that, because that OCAPS is still basically about trade. But what we did on the 7th of September was to really come together to put on the table the establishment of a forum of African and Caribbean states to connect the Secretariat of the African Union and of CARICOM to help service this forum of African and Caribbean states, and to look at a whole range of programs that we're going to do together. Now, the foundation of all this is, as you said, the common ancestry between the African people of the Caribbean and the people of continental Africa. You are quite right. In Barbados, where I live, 95% of the population is really made up of people of African descent. So if we look at CARICOM, our Caribbean community, the name is the Caribbean community, but we call it CARICOM for short. But we have 15 member states. So we have states like Haiti, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Barbados, Suriname, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Dominica, and we go on. Most of them, the population is predominantly of African descent. Three of them possess sizable populations of East Indian descent. So in Trinidad and Tobago, about half of the population is of East Indian descent. Similarly in Guyana, and similarly in Suriname. So there are three where we have a kind of African East Indian split. Now the East Indians were imported after slavery was abolished. After slavery was abolished, many of the formerly enslaved Africans abandoned the European plantations. And so the European planters started to bring in indentured servants, indentured labor from India. And that's how the East Indian population was built up. But in many of the islands, the population is predominantly of African descent. As I said, in Barbados, about 95%. And our presence in this part of the world goes way back to that Columbus voyage of 1492, when Columbus left Spain and came across the Atlantic and started the colonization, the European colonization of the Caribbean and the American continent. Now, the Caribbean, we are mostly a chain of islands. We are mostly a chain of islands bordering the Atlantic Ocean across from Africa. So you get to us, and then the American continent is just behind, a little further west, just behind the chain of islands. We tend to be a chain of islands that run from the Florida in the United States of America. So the southern end of the United States of America, right down to the northern tip of South America. So we are that chain of islands that kind of connects North America to South America, and we face the Atlantic and we face Africa. Barbados is actually the most easterly of the chain of islands. So during the days of sailing ships, if a sailing vessel left the west coast of Africa, the winds, the prevailing, they call them the trade winds, would take that ship right to Barbados. So Barbados tended to be the first port of call for ships coming across the Atlantic from West Africa to this part of the world, because of the winds and the fact that these were sailing ships. So from when the Europeans first came here, they found indigenous people living here, but they immediately started to colonize the region. They enslaved the indigenous people, and they decimated. They carried out genocide. So they wiped out. They wiped out most of the indigenous people. And when they started the sugar, especially when they started the sugar cultivation, which required a great amount of physical labor, they had so decimated the indigenous people that they had to look elsewhere for a source of labor. And eventually they looked to Africa. So they went to Africa, they started the enslavement of African people, and their slave ships went to Africa, mostly to the west coast of Africa, although they enslaved Africans from the interior, from remote other areas of the continent, but mainly from West Africa. And those slave ships then came across what was called the Middle Passage, across the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean islands and the American continent. So 400 years have passed since, in fact, I would say 500 years have passed since the very first Africans, enslaved Africans, were brought to this part of the world. And slavery was abolished between 1834 and 1838. And I can tell you, as soon as slavery was abolished in Barbados and our people got their freedom, quote unquote, it was still a restricted freedom, but they got some autonomy. Immediately, Black Barbadians started to plan back to Africa expeditions. Many of them wanted to go back to Africa. And after several decades of effort, in 1865, they were able to get a ship to take about 350 Black Barbadians, back across the Atlantic to Liberia. And on that vessel was a 12-year-old Barbadian boy who grew up in Liberia and became the president of Liberia, President Arthur Barclay of Liberia. He left Barbados as a 12-year-old boy. And so we have had this back to Africa impulse. And you've had Barbadians who have gone to, way back in the 19th century, to Liberia, to Guinea, to the Gambia. And in the 20th century, we have had Barbadians leading expedition repatriation to Ethiopia. And later on in the century, what used to happen in the 1940s and 50s, you would have, by then we had Black self-government and so forth. We had advanced more, but you had scholars from the Caribbean going to Britain for university education, graduating from universities in England, not being able to find employment opportunities back in the Caribbean, and heading to West Africa. So you had several scholars from Barbados and Trinidad and Jamaica who, after getting their university education in England, headed to Ghana and Nigeria and so forth. In fact, our great poet, the Barbadian Kamau Brathwaite, he spent close to 10 years in Ghana after graduating from Cambridge University. And he credited that experience in Ghana for really helping him to make the connection between his African Barbadian experience and the continental African experience, and helping him to develop tremendous body of artistic work. So we have had some of those contacts, but now we are taking it to a new level where our governments and our nation states are going to be much more intimately involved.
So, if we look at it, what do you think would happen now at this? You're just like, okay, there had been this movement, or we have been this, this movement, but this one is now the end. This is going to end everything. We're still going to see this petty movement, but it's not just going to be on individual levels, but now it is the continent and its people working together like an umbrella. Would you want to describe that?
Yes, well, I mean, we have to work on it. We have to make sure that the things that were put on the agenda at this meeting are realized. In fact, right now, the CARICOM Secretariat is perfecting the communique that's going to come out, and that communique will list in great detail all of the things that were put on the agenda. I just sent them a message reminding them. Remember, several of the prime ministers put the idea of Africa and the Caribbean coming together to pursue reparations on the agenda. At least 3 of the prime ministers made a call for that. One of the prime ministers spoke about repatriation. In UN language, the facilitation of welcomed return of African descendants to the continent of Africa. So a lot of very powerful ideas were canvassed, were put on the table. But I think what is going to be critical is that we set up the institutional framework. So the institutional framework that was proposed is the establishment of a forum of African and Caribbean territories and states. So they're calling it Forum of African and Caribbean Territories, FACTS, 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 African Forum of African and Caribbean Territories and States. That is to be established, and that is to be established within 6 months. Also, that we will have an annual summit, heads of government meeting every year on the 7th of September. We will designate the 7th of September as Africa CARICOM Day. And from here onwards, every year we will have an annual heads of government summit on that day. So if that institutional infrastructure can be put in place, and there's no reason why it will not be put in place, we will then put in place the modalities for collaboration between the two regions. We have already signaled that communication, transportation between Africa and the Caribbean is going to have to be a priority. In fact, CARICOM has recommended that we abolish visa requirements for travel between the Caribbean and Africa. I must tell you that my country, Barbados, there are no visa requirements for any country that is within the Commonwealth, their citizens coming to Barbados. So we already don't require visas for many African countries, but it tends not to be reciprocated. So the proposal is that there be an abolition of visa requirements in both directions, and that also something that we've been asking for a long time, that we establish a regular direct airline flight between Africa and the Caribbean. And my prime minister put that on the table, and the way she expressed it, she said that we should be able to start with at least one weekly direct flight between the continent and the Caribbean, even if the African Union and CARICOM need to subsidize it in its initial phases in order to make it happen. So I'm hoping that that will happen, and that will make a very big difference when people can travel. Because as you would know, being in Europe, um, the Western media puts out a very skewed and negative and stereotypical image about Africa. And sometimes the best way to counteract that is really for people to travel to Africa and see for themselves. I must tell you, speaking personally, I am actually married to a Ghanaian woman. My wife is from Ghana. I was a Pan-Africanist long before I met her, and maybe my life just kind of evolved in that direction. But we do have, we even at the level of individual families, we are building that connection because she lives in Barbados. She has a sister and a brother, two sisters and a brother, who also live in Barbados. And so, yes, so we are making those connections, but it is so important that people be able to travel and to go and actually see for themselves that this image that the BBC and the CNN and the Fox News and all the Western media like to give them about Africa, that is not the true story. That's not the true picture. There may be elements of that, but it's definitely not the full picture. Mm-hmm.
You just envelop everything as if you read my mind, what I had to ask or stuff like that. Like you already just knew what the audience was expecting. I mean, it's really, really intelligent and a smart step that CARICOM has put out there. Now, who made the move first? Was it the African Union or the Caribbean? I know my prime minister is the tough one there. She must have made that foot step. Who made it? Who
Yes,
gave
well,
them?
Barbados, we have the only female prime minister in the Caribbean community, and a very, very outstanding leader. She came to office in 2018, and she did come to office and come to CARICOM with the idea of enhanced collaboration and relationship building with Africa. So, Barbados is a country. We have just established a high commission in Kenya. We are we're in the process now of establishing an embassy in Ghana. In fact, right now we have our trade and cultural attaché on the ground in Ghana doing work, and the ambassador is soon going to make the journey to Ghana, and we have plans for a diplomatic office in Morocco as well. So that's Barbados. So that was very much part of our agenda. But what really then Prime Minister Gonzalez of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he had this brilliant idea of creating an ABCD commission: A for Africa, B for Brazil. Brazil is the country outside of Africa with the largest African population. So B for Brazil, C for Caribbean, and D for diaspora. So his brilliant idea was, look, why don't we bring together the African continent, the country of Brazil, with all of those African people, the Caribbean, and the wider diaspora in Europe and North America. Why don't we bring them together in one organization? So he put forward that idea in 2019. 2019 is very important because in 2019, in addition to those ideas being tossed around, President Uhuru Kenyatta and President Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana, both of them visited the Caribbean in 2019. And when President Uhuru Kenyatta was in Barbados as part of that visit, he held a meeting in Barbados with a number of the CARICOM heads of government. And it was at that meeting that the idea was agreed upon that we should have a summit of Africa and the Caribbean community. So it was agreed upon at that meeting. President Kenyatta then took that idea to the African Union Heads of Government Conference. And our leaders similarly took the idea to our Caribbean community Heads of Government Conference. So both Heads of Government conferences approved the idea. And the African Union gave President Kenyatta the mandate to go ahead and organize the summit. Now, so those two presidents visited the Caribbean, but our leaders also reciprocated, because Prime Minister Motley, she then reciprocated with a visit to Ghana, and she also visited Kenya. So 2019 was a very important year through these heads of government visits. So the initial idea was that we were going to have a physical summit in Nairobi, Kenya, in June of 2020. So plans were made for that. But then along came COVID-19. And because of COVID-19, it was decided that we had to postpone that physical summit to 2021. So we thought that, well, maybe by 2021, we would have the COVID-19 under control. So we were going to have a physical summit in 2021. Unfortunately, COVID was still a factor. And so we had to postpone that physical summit for a second time. And it was then that President Kenyatta said, look, clearly we're not going to have the physical summit. Let's have a virtual summit in September. So he pushed the idea of the virtual summit on the 7th of September, and that's how it came about. So that's the immediate background. Kudos to President Uhuru Kenyatta for really sticking with it and making sure that it happened. But as I said, and to his credit as well, President Kenyatta has made an office space available to CARICOM in Nairobi, rent-free, for 2 years. He has said to CARICOM, look, I want you to come and set up an embassy in Nairobi. We will give you the office space free for the first 2 years. So, of course, Barbados immediately jumped on it. And Barbados has, in a sense, led the way with our High Commission in Kenya, utilizing some of that office space. But it's expected that the whole of CARICOM will also have a presence there. And our Prime Minister, she's very clear. She said, look, we have to have a presence in Nairobi, because not only because of the bilateral relationship, but there are 3 centers of United Nations power in the world. One center is in New York, a second center is in Geneva, but the third center is in Nairobi, Kenya. You have the UN Environmental Program headquartered in Nairobi. You have the UN Habitat headquartered in Nairobi, and you have several other UN offices in Nairobi. So she is determined that we must so support Kenya that we develop Nairobi into the 3rd center of UN power in the world. So when you think of the UN, you will think of New York, Geneva, and Nairobi. And so that's part of the futuristic thinking. And if that's the case, then we need to be there. Our thinking is that everything related to the environment, all of the international programs related to climate change, the environment, should really be centered in Nairobi, Kenya. So that's how we have to think. We have to build our own strength. Build our own institutions.
Excellent. I mean, of course, that is His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, for those of us who have never heard, I mean, this is just a part of him. I know him to be that kind of a president that takes really that initiatives, particularly when it comes. He has a feeling for the Caribbeans. I don't know. He used to be a Rasta man, and he's currently always in Jamaica, and so you could actually see that one his ancestry, maybe the Marcus Garveys, or he is a transition of them. Absolutely. And really kudos and a handshake out there to our Kenyans, and particularly His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. That's a very big move. Now, Excellency, there's still one thing that I really, because if you look at the win, we also talked about it yesterday. East Africa is actually taking the leap, yeah, to facilitate. They see the opportunities or the need for our people to come back. But like you said, historically, this indigenous Caribbeans that are there mostly were from West Africa. Now, were the West Africaners, like even President Nana, were they not interested, or Nigeria, or was the African Union representing that? How did it come that, it's East Africa taking that lead?
Well, Ghana is very much in the forefront of reaching out to this part of the world. In fact, when President Nana Akufo-Addo came to Barbados, the first he was the first African head of state who was invited to address the Parliament of Barbados. And out of his visit came some very important initiatives. In fact, Barbados has a scarcity of nurses at present. We suffer. Yeah, yes, we suffer from the developed countries enticing our nurses away. So anyhow, at this point in time, we have a scarcity, and we decided, with the collaboration of Ghana, that we would recruit for nurses in Ghana. Mm-hmm. So right now we have 95 Ghanaian nurses working here in Barbados, and so that was an initiative of President Akufo-Addo and Prime Minister Motley. And that was just the beginning, because we really want about 350 nurses. So that's just really the first batch. But yes, Ghana had the year of return in 2019. Mm-hmm. Ghana was commemorating the 400th anniversary of the first Africans taken from what was then the Gold Coast, what is now known as Ghana, to the region of the Americas, the first enslaved Africans. And Ghana had 2019 as the year of return. So that's another important element as well, that Ghana year of return in 2019. And so Ghanaian officials from the Ministry of Tourism visited Barbados. We are looking at, in fact, there's going to be a charter flight in November between Barbados and Ghana. There was a joint, it was just 2 weeks ago or so, there was a joint Anglican church service between the Anglican Cathedral here in Barbados and the Anglican Cathedral there in Accra, Ghana. They connected via the communications technology. And so there was a joint service where the ones in the church here in Barbados were able to participate in the service in Ghana, and vice versa. So, things like that are happening. One of the reasons that we didn't have many West African heads of state addressing the meeting on the 7th is because there was a meeting of ECOWAS to deal with the coup indictment. So, for example, the president of Ghana was supposed to speak at the summit. He wasn't able to speak because he was in a meeting dealing with the coup. But we had 8 African heads of government who addressed the summit, 9 CARICOM heads of government addressed. So there were 17 leaders, 17 presidents or prime ministers who spoke. And we also had the chair of the African Union Commission,
Mhm.
the Secretary General of the Caribbean Community Secretariat, the President of the Caribbean Development Bank, the African Union Special Envoy on COVID, and the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. So, whereas President Kenyatta did play a very important role, I think it is fair to say that they're coming from West Africa, and certainly from Ghana, Ghana in particular. There's a tremendous drive and a tremendous amount of interest in making the link. Yeah.
True. Absolutely. Yes. You already also took one of part of the question when you said we saw that in 2020 this 95 nurses that left Ghana to Barbados, and the question was, how did they come? Because we're talking about the airlines, like we already just saw that happen. Was it a Ghanaian flight or how?
We arranged a special charter flight, a special direct charter flight for them right across the Atlantic. It's not, a flight from Ghana to Barbados would probably maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 hours, but that's what we need. So we don't have to go through Europe or North America. We come straight across the Atlantic. Yeah, so it can be done. We did it. We did it for the Ghanaian nurses. So the Barbados government would have arranged that special charter flight. Yeah. So we already have some foundations that have been laid. Actually, when our Prime Minister visited Ghana, we have a very famous slave burial ground in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And she took some of the soil from that slavery burial ground. We call it sacred soil. And she took it with her to Ghana, and it was buried in Ghana. And she made the point that that was symbolic, that soil contained this physical and spiritual essence of our common ancestors. And the burying of that, taking it back across the Atlantic and burying it in the ground of Ghana was symbolic of our coming back home, of our homecoming. And yes, that is those of us who are conscious, those of us who are Pan-Africanists, who have done the research, that's the level of seriousness we attached it. But I think what you implied earlier on in one of your comments is also very important, that we really do have to complement these initiatives by a lot of popular education, to bring home to our people, all of our people, that we are family, we are kith and kin, because we shouldn't assume that all African people understand this, all people on the continent of Africa understand this, or all Black people in the Caribbean understand this. So I think we would be well advised to prioritize popular education as well, so that we make the point, that we are kith and kin, we are family, and we explain to people how we are family, why we are family. And I think that too is going to be very important, because as you implied, there are probably many people on the continent of Africa who don't even know that the Caribbean exists, or what is the Caribbean, where is the Caribbean, who are the people who live in the Caribbean. So yeah, I think we would be well advised not to neglect that aspect of what we need to do.
Thank you so much, His Excellency. I think that is the fundamental basis of our existence before any other thing would come: education, our history. Because I don't know how you look at it. I had a conversation with someone, and we actually discussed that the enslaved brothers and sisters that we have are much, much better than the colonized Africans on the continent. And we had to disagree on many points, but one thing was very similar and clear. The fact that our people in the diaspora, when they were enslaved, were refused education. Of course, we were looking at it as a privilege, but the kind of education that they were giving to us was the one to wipe away our history. And that wasn't done during the colonization on the continent. On the continent, even to today, we know every other world history apart from our history. And so that inability that they could say you can go to this school, you can go to this school, actually constituted why we should look at it now like an opportunity for us, not a privilege that like we look in those days. So how do you see the way of this, even before we get to do bilateral cooperations and business and trade and nature and stuff? How do you pursue, well, the smaller steps that we can start, even by introducing a common curriculum in terms of education between, you know, the mainland and the I mean, I'm talking about the educational sector, like you said.
Well, even before we get to the specific questions of curriculum and so forth, I think it's fair to say that because we were people displaced from the African continent, and we had that, we understood that we had come from a place called Africa, and so Africa was part of our ancestral memory. It was part of our imagination. Among some of our people, there's a romantic notion of Africa as well. You know, Africa is that's a great homeland. So I guess we would have had a greater consciousness of Africa than continental Africans could have had of the New World, because for us, we have been taken from Africa, and there was even a desire to return, to go back to Africa. In fact, there are maroon communities in places like Suriname, for example. Maroons are enslaved Africans who escaped the plantation, went into the forest areas, and established their own communities, their own nations. And in places like Suriname, which is on the northern coast of South America, when they escaped the plantation, they were actually trying to find their way back to Africa. Of course, they never found their way back to Africa, but what they did is that they recreated Africa in the forests of South America. But I remember visiting a maroon community, and I took with me a Barbadian musician who had a song called "I Want to Know You, Africa." And when we went into the maroon community, he started to play this song. They gathered around us. He started to play this song for the community. And they would not let him finish that song. They just kept repeating the words, "I want to know you, Africa. I want to know you, Africa." Because historically, when they escaped the plantation, the whole idea was actually to make their way back to Africa. So anyhow, I just give that as a little historical background, why we might have a greater consciousness of continent of Africa than people on the continent would have of places like the Caribbean or the African diaspora, let's say the African diaspora. But we still have our problems too. I mean, we still are subjected to the Western propaganda. Some of us still suffer from, the psychological phobias of believing that because we are more westernized, that we must be superior to people from the African continent, and likewise you have people from the African continent who may believe because these people are the descendants of enslaved Africans, we are superior to them, and all that kind of nonsense. So education is going to clear up some of those things. But I've always told people, everybody I meet, that I've been to many African countries, and I have never had any problem in my engagements with continental Africans, but I guess it depends on your level of wisdom and how you engage and your level of insight. But yes, without education, without formal education, popular education to bring home who we are and that we are kith and kin and what we share, we could end up, with some problems in the relationship. So at the formal level, I must tell you again, I think we have a very progressive government here in Barbados. I'm actually a member of a history curriculum development committee of our Ministry of Education, and we just finished developing a history syllabus for our primary schools and the junior levels of our secondary schools, um, about our history on the continent, in the Caribbean, that will make the link. So we need to make sure that that Pan-African history is to be found in our education systems all across both the Caribbean and Africa. But this developing these relationships now gives us a platform to do just that. So we need to be teaching this history and these links between ourselves at the primary level, at the secondary school level, and at the university level. Um, we have some of our scholars. Maybe you know of the Guyanese scholar Walter Rodney, who wrote the book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa.
Yes.
It was written since the late 1970s,
Mm-hmm.
but a very, very important text. Our own Barbadian historian, Sir Hilary Beckles, he has written some magnificent books on the issue of reparations. He has one called Britain's Black Debt, and Britain's barbarity time in Barbados. So yes, I think we have to look at both the formal education system, but we also have to look at the popular education. And I'm glad that you signal it in this conversation, because I'm going to make it my business to draw it to the attention of this new forum of African and Caribbean states that we need to move very quickly, very, very quickly, to establish a foundation of, popular education that brings home to our people and gives them the knowledge that we are family, we are kith and kin, and explains to them how we got separated and why we need to reconnect. Very, very important. So that's work to be done. That's work to be done. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I mean, other questions would come in, and I could open the line and take up some few questions directly to you, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
While we're waiting for these callers to call in, I want to proceed to this fact. What would be actually the responsibility of fact? What would they be doing now? Are they going to get database of, like if in Caribbean somebody like, I want to go to Nigeria or to Cameroon, the same requirements of CARICOM on the continent would apply, isn't it? Visa free and stuff like that. Common person.
Well, just remember this event just took place
Yes.
on Tuesday. They're now finalizing the communique. So they're trying to get from all of the participants, all of the countries that participated, they're trying to get an accurate record of all of the proposals, all of the projects that were put on the table. There's some that heads of government indicated at the meeting that they were endorsing. So once the communique is done, it would go out to the public, but more importantly, it would go out to all of the member states and governments of the African Union and CARICOM. And I would imagine that the idea for the permanent forum, both organizations would have to approve that. but I don't think there's any doubt that they would approve it. What was put on the table is that the two secretariats should be given a period of 6 months to develop a charter, for the new forum, and to develop a memorandum of operation as to how the forum would actually operate, to develop rules, guidelines and regulations for how the forum would actually operate. And yes, so I guess there will be that 6 months gestation period. Yeah, so to work through all of those details. But when all is said and done, we are going to have some kind of institutional structure that will involve the Secretariat of CARICOM and the Secretariat of the African Union. And we will have an annual heads of government conference where the heads of government will be able to come together to review what has been done, to make changes, to make additions, to make sure that we do follow through on the things that we said we were going to follow through on. So we will see the full outline of it. There's some things that there's some kind of, I guess we call low-hanging fruit that hopefully we'll be able to achieve very quickly. So I would hope that the removal of the visa requirements is something we could quickly achieve. The direct flight, I would hope that that's something we could relatively quickly achieve. And there were things like that we should sign a multilateral air services agreement just to make it easy for any company interested in air transportation between Africa and the Caribbean. They should get all the concessions that they require. A double taxation agreement to encourage our businesses to, move between the two regions and to do business and not to suffer any penalties, any taxation penalties and so forth. So there'll be some low-hanging fruit that we can get to. And I would certainly suggest that one of the things that we need to move on very, very quickly is, Prime Minister Motley did put on the agenda that we should establish some kind of mass communications platform or mechanism, some platform or mechanism for a two-way flow of news, information, programming, artistic programming between Africa and the Caribbean. And I think that would be critical because that will help to carry out the popular education that we have just agreed is going to be needed. So I guess we will look at those things that are relatively easy to achieve and go about it. One of the things that our Prime Minister also put on the table is that she reminded everyone that this year is the 20th anniversary of the United Nations World Conference Against Racism that was held in Durban, South Africa in 2001. And that on the 22nd of this month, there's going to be a high-level heads of government event at the United Nations to commemorate the 20th anniversary. And she was calling upon all African Union and CARICOM governments to attend that heads of government high-level meeting at the UN and to use it to advance the issue of reparations within the UN processes. For us in CARICOM, the issue of reparations is very important as the descendants of formerly enslaved people. Our ancestors were worked to death on the plantations of the Caribbean. For hundreds of years, our people did not benefit from the fruits of their labor. The fruits of their labor were looted and siphoned off to build up Europe and North America. And we have never been compensated. We have never been compensated for the loss of the fruits of our labor, for for the punishment that was inflicted on us, on our ancestors, of enslavement and all that went with enslavement, because with enslavement went whippings, mutilations, rapes, branding with hot irons. I mean, you name it. Those plantations were like concentration camps. The first concentration camps were not in Nazi Germany. They were in places like Barbados and Jamaica, right? And so we are insistent. In 2013, we established a CARICOM Reparations Commission, and we have launched a claim for reparations for both the genocide inflicted on the native people of the Caribbean, the indigenous people that were found here, who millions of them were wiped out, and for African enslavement. And so we are asking Africa to join us in this campaign, because Africa was depopulated, Africa was destabilized, Africa's developmental process was derailed and was set back, literally hundreds of years. So Africa is entitled to compensation as well. And when we say compensation, we don't necessarily mean individual cash payments. We are talking mostly about developmental programs. Of course, capital transfers will play a role in it too, debt cancellation, capital transfers. But we are talking about developmental programs to develop health infrastructure, education infrastructure, cultural industries, museums, repatriation. Some of our people want to physically return to the continent of Africa. African governments and Caribbean governments should not have to finance that. That should be financed by the governments and nations that were responsible for taking the ancestors of these people out of Africa in the first place. So she was saying to them, let us all participate in this UN session on the 22nd, and let us use that opportunity to advance this reparations claim within the United Nations processes. So that's going to be another important area of collaboration. We want to collaborate. We want Africa to collaborate with us on advancing the cause for reparations.
When we listen to something like this, and the PM was actually encouraging them to participate, is it something to even encourage the African Union or the continent, or it is something that they even should have been the one to take the lead? I mean, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the World Conference was actually in Durban, South Africa. I attended that conference. I was deeply involved with the whole process of the UN World Conference against racism, and it was a very, very important conference. And unfortunately, my final day in South Africa, when the World Conference had just ended, and I was actually in the airport getting ready to board a flight from Johannesburg to Europe, we saw on the television monitors people jumping out of these two tall buildings in New York. And we thought it was a movie, that we were watching a movie. It turned out to be, the destruction of the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Yeah, at that time, the whole world was talking about the UN World Conference against racism. And what was supposed to happen to bring justice for all the racial discrimination and injustices. That was in contemporary parlance, that is what was trending. But then along came 9/11, and then President George Bush announced this war on terror. And that totally knocked the UN World Conference off the agenda, totally. And these Western powers, the America, Canada, Australia, the white powers, the European Union powers as well, they have been very hostile to the World Conference Against Racism. The World Conference Against Racism produced a document called the Durban Declaration and Plan of Action, which outlines a whole plan of action to make recompense, to give remedies for all the racial discrimination, all the racial injustices. But the wealthy white countries for 20 years now have been hostile to that plan of action. So we're in a struggle, you know. Nothing is going to come easy. But I'm convinced that we can win that struggle, because it is a just and righteous struggle. We have justice and righteousness on our side, and we just have to pursue the struggle with, you know, conviction and passion. And a good location to pursue that struggle is within the multilateral institutions. Basically, what we are saying is, because of those centuries of underdevelopment, because of those centuries of the looting and plundering of our nations and peoples, that we now possess a fundamental and inalienable right to development. And those countries and entities that develop themselves at our expense, they are under a duty to facilitate that right to development. And we have to insist that this must be made into a principle of international law. Correct. That peoples and nations that were looted and plundered for centuries now possess a fundamental and inalienable right to development, right? To undo all of that disadvantage and injustice. So the way the World Bank relates to us, the way the IMF relates to us, you know, the way the UN Security Council relates to us, all of those relations must be predicated on the fact that we possess a right to development. We are not asking for favors. We possess a right to development based on the history, you see, and that's where we have to take our stand. We're not apologizing for it. This international economic and political order that we exist in today is structurally exploitative. It was configured during the colonial period. It has its roots in the colonial period. Our nations, our newly independent nations, were inserted into it in a structurally subordinate and exploitative manner. And we must not accept it. We must insist that it has to change, and it has to respect and give credence to our right to development, to make up for those centuries of devastation and exploitation. And we can do it. Africa, the Caribbean, you know, the Caribbean, we can go so far by ourselves, but we need the weight of Africa. Africa brings a certain civilizational weight, and so that is so important. It is the combination of the two that will prove to be so powerful and so effective.
I mean, this portion, you see me just smile, and my smile gets bigger, is you actually could see a diplomat that is a freedom fighter, is an activist, is a Pan-African. You were really in those elements that actually said, yes, son of the soil, you know what you want. It's not like politicking or trying to talk over the facts, but you are saying it exactly the way it should be, irrespective of any agendas that you're sitting on. And so I truly congratulate you, and you just touch a part of us, really, and just by really articulating and saying reparations. Because when we talk about reparations, that would have been the other questions that we're taking. Even the relationship, Now, when we talk about reparation, then automatically we have to address the issue of citizenship to say, what about those who just say, I want to go back home? It's my right to go back home. I don't want to stay here.
Mm-hmm.
And that issue, you just trash it, His Excellency. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. The other issue that I wanted to talk about is particularly in your aspect as a legal expert, as a lawyer, as an attorney. So do you also see something like, I mean, even if there would not be this kind of, let's sit and talk about that, the lawyers maybe on the continent and the Caribbean also coming up in a kind of a union or an umbrella to say, I mean, we should start suing for that?
Well, yes and no. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. As a lawyer, any lawyer will tell you, any good lawyer will tell you, you only go to court if you are almost certain you're going to win. So right now, the major international court, the International Court of Justice, the so-called World Court, is very much dominated by these big, wealthy nations.
Mm.
So we have to be careful, because even though we might think that the law and facts are on our side, we don't want to go to a court that is skewed against us.
Correct.
Because if you take a case to court and you lose the case, even if you lose it unjustly, but you lose it, then your opponents are going to say, look, this matter has already been decided upon by the courts. We are not entertaining any more discussion about it.
Correct.
So I think we have to be careful with that. I think that what we need to push for is the establishment of an international UN tribunal. Mm-hmm. That's why I think the activism within the United Nations processes are so important. We need first of all, we need to get to a special UN conference just on this issue of reparations for native genocide and African enslavement. And in the Caribbean, we are very clear. Our claim is not only for African enslavement, because we say a terrible crime against humanity was committed against the first people of this region. We are here on land that initially belonged to indigenous people who lived here, who Columbus came and found those people there and said he discovered them. But those people were living in this part of the world for thousands of years. So we are very clear that we are claiming reparations for the genocide of the native people, plus the African enslavement. And yes, and we have to develop this campaign into an international cause célèbre. Mm-hmm. I think we need to bear in mind the international anti-apartheid movement of the 1970s and 1980s. And we have to try to develop the reparations campaign into a similar, very powerful international movement, where we have to bring the weight of world public opinion on our side. So we have to educate the entire world about this history and about these tremendous injustices that were done. So we have to bring world opinion to a stage where wherever the governmental representatives of these European countries go, people all over the world are saying to them, but what about the debt you owe to the African people? When are you going to pay that debt? And so I think that's how we have to approach it. We have to cultivate world public opinion. We have to do a lot of work within the United Nations system. I think we have to work towards getting a special UN conference that will look specifically at native genocide and African enslavement, reparations for Native genocide and African enslavement. And then we have to go on to get the United Nations to set up a special tribunal, international law tribunal, that treat to the claim for reparations. I think that's a more appropriate and a safer approach than rushing into the so-called World Court, where you may have good law on your side, but you may come up against a skewed process that is going to give you a legal defeat. And the last thing we want is a legal defeat.
Correct. Of course, we would still have to come into this issue of reparations and to see even the organizations, like we said, that could also be a point of a collaboration with the continent and, database research on particularly, it's a whole lot of work that we have to put together, and could be also a part of the collaboration. Now, His Excellency, were you actually satisfied with the result and the conference? Of course, I know you're already putting, like you said, there are also a blueprint and milestones that you're doing, but just from your feeling, how did you, after the conference, did you say, yes, this is what we really wanted at the beginning?
Yeah, well, I was one of the persons really pushing for this conference to materialize,
Correct.
So yeah, I mean, you always want more, you always want better, but I am satisfied that a good start has been made. I think that a relationship between the African Union and CARICOM is not a difficult relationship structure. I give you, okay, so we talk about the two secretariats having a link. But in addition to that, we have 17 CARICOM institutions and 8 associate institutions of CARICOM. So we have institutions that deal with education, climate change, renewable energy. I mean, you name it. The Caribbean Development Bank, the University of the West Indies, virtually every sphere of activity. As I said, CARICOM is 15 member states, and we have 5 associate member states. So what we do functional cooperation. So for example, instead of each Caribbean nation trying to have its own university, we have a University of the West Indies, right? Instead of every Caribbean nation trying to do public health, for example, we have the Caribbean Public Health Agency. So these are the functional cooperation institutions that we have. And I dare say we have the Caribbean Development Bank. So we have a regional development bank. So I dare say on the continent of Africa, you have counterpart institutions.
Correct.
So the same way we have a Caribbean Development Bank, you have an African Development Bank. So it should be relatively easy for these institutions to be brought together. We don't have to go about creating a whole set of new institutions. They already exist. What we need to do is to bring them together and let them start working on some joint projects. So I can see that happening. I can see that happening quite easily. It just calls for the political will. Once we have the political will, we can do it. This Atlantic Ocean that separates us, we have to see it as a pond, an Atlantic pond. I mean, Africans came to this part of the world long before Columbus. Africans sailed from West Africa. In fact, there's a Caribbean scholar called Ivan van Sertima. He wrote a book called They Came Before Columbus. There is a lot of archaeological evidence of African presence in the Caribbean and the Americas long before the Europeans got here, right? So this middle passage that was this journey of great trauma. We have to reverse that Middle Passage, this Atlantic Ocean. We have to turn it into a little pond, and we can do that. We can do that. So, I'm optimistic, but some of us are going to really have to stay on the case and make sure that there's no lapsing, that we go forward and do what we're supposed to do. So we depend on you to help with that as well. You have to nudge us. You have to nudge us as well and say, look, you need to get on. You need to get on with it. But this, we must make the 21st century the African century. This must be our century. Why can't it be? Why can't it be the African century? Why?
It is.
Why? Let's make it.
You have already done it, His Excellency. It is the 21st decade of the African. That's why we call it. It is our century. Everything is working for us. We see it already with your initiative, with your input, with your long-term dream that is actually materializing. We say congratulations. I mean, it's really doving our hearts to this initiative to CARICOM, and I don't see which every African would not be celebrating. It's the same thing that we were saying. So now we all know that we have a very strategic date on the Pan-African calendar, which is the 7th of September. And this date is going to be a reverse of everything that works for good for us. So I want to thank you so much, His Excellency. I'm picking up some calls, and yeah. And if there's some other questions, we'll come back to it. Let's listen to what our people are saying. Hello.
Yes, hi. Are we on the air?
Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm calling from the Cayman Islands. And I have a question for your honorable guest.
Okay, go ahead. What's your name, sir?
Yes, my name is Endoro.
Endoro, okay.
Endoro, yeah.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I wanted to know from this meeting, will there be like a manifesto or some sort of a conference of events, a listing of events? And then secondly, there's a lot of us that are qualified to solve our problems, but we're so scattered all across the diaspora. And I think the primary problem is we don't have a communication system that connect us. So I want him to speak to that. And I see our reality happening within 10 years or less, because it doesn't matter what the courts say, whatever. Power concedes nothing unless it's power. And we're taking back our power. So we're not just waiting for reparations or whatever. We are going to be a global, noble people once again. And I thank you for taking my call.
Thank you so much also for addressing your question. Over to you, His Excellency.
Yes, well, I agree with him. Even as I'm speaking here now, the CARICOM Secretariat is in the process of finalizing the communique. So they've already sent out to us, to the different governments, a draft of the communique, but asking us to go through it and to see if any important elements were omitted, and to let them know by the end of the business day today, Friday. So I would imagine by Monday of next week, we will have the official communique from the summit. That will be very detailed. It's going to be a very detailed communique, listing all of the things that were either agreed upon or put on the table for further consideration. So in a sense, that will be the kind of manifesto that the caller was asking for. But bear in mind that an institutional structure now has to be put in place.
Absolutely.
And that institutional structure will be the new Forum of African and Caribbean territories and states. And so that it will take a little time to get that done, because the two secretariats have to come up with a charter for that new structure, and they have to come up with operational procedures for that new structure. Now, the chairman of CARICOM has suggested that all of that work should be done within the next 6 months. So yes, so there may be that 6 month gestation period, but we should then be, very much on our way. And he also proposed that every 7th of September we would come back together, the heads of government, in a summit, obviously to review the work, to review how we are doing with implementing it, how the structure that we have put in place is working, to put new items on the agenda, and so forth. So yes, so that part of it is going to be very important. Yes, and so the follow through on that. So is so it seems as though we may have that about 6 month gestation period to get all of the structure in place. But I would think by early next week we will have the very detailed communique, which will be a kind of manifesto of the things that we are coming together to accomplish.
Thank you. You all heard that. What should we be doing on the Pan African Daily TV? You already see my job, and yes, we had the first press release from Tanzania. It was forwarded to us by a correspondent in Tanzania, and we had to break it up. And this is one of the major things why I feel, and what you're just addressing, communication is the very a lot of these projects, or even about curriculum and other things, just go by. And if we keep thinking that the mainstream would address it, you already know the challenges that they would even take it and make it look so crazy and so weird that you, even as an African, would not buy into that idea. So communication, the media is a very, very important aspect. And we from the Pan African Daily TV, we're giving all our support. Should you have a correspondent there to update us anytime, whenever, for instance, when the communique is going to come up, that they come on the show. If you're not available, of course, we're really thankful that to have you here. But is it possible that we would have a correspondent to actually take us, or the viewers and the followers, on each step, why we establish something that is structured?
Yeah, well, I will certainly send you the communique once it comes out. Yes, we can find officers at the CARICOM Secretariat that could come on a program like this to speak about the process. To answer another part of the question raised by the caller about the diaspora, yeah, I mean, he is right. We have to organize the diaspora. We have to reach not just the African Union, the African Union and CARICOM, but also the diaspora. But I think we have to start somewhere, and I think it's good to start with African Union and CARICOM, and solidify that. And once we have something solid, reach out to the diaspora. The African Union has really struggled with organize. I'm speaking now. I'm speaking now in my civil society capacity as chairman of the Caribbean Pan-African Network that has been working with the African Union project since 2004.
Thank you.
Before I became a diplomat, long before. But that 6-region initiative, that diaspora initiative, it has proven very difficult to organize. Our Caribbean Pan-African Network is perhaps the most successful diaspora organization, in terms of the African Union 6-region structure. But they have really struggled to put similar organization in place in Europe, in North America, and in other parts of the diaspora. And it is so I know how difficult it is. It is very difficult to organize the diaspora. It is much easier to deal with, let's say, the Caribbean, because we are a region of Black or African nations and governments. So that's why it is relative. That's why it makes so much sense for the relationship between the African Union and CARICOM to take place, because you are dealing. This is the one area of the diaspora where you actually have independent Black or predominantly African nations and governments. You see. And so that makes it easier to put that organization in place. But I think once we have that organization in place, obviously we have to reach the African and Caribbean diaspora. We have to reach our people in Europe and North America and Latin America, you know. So that's work. That's also work for the future. And yes, and so it's great to have contacts like yourself. And that needs to be built into it. But that's why Prime Minister Gonzalez had this concept of the ABCD Commission. That was precisely what he had in mind. And in fact, if you listen to his contribution at the summit, he was actually saying that this forum should be a stepping stone towards an even larger ABCD organization, Africa, Brazil, Caribbean diaspora. By diaspora, he means you. He means all of our African and Caribbean people in Europe, North America, Latin America, all to be brought into the same structure. So he is saying that he is seeing that as the ultimate objective, and this is a stepping stone to that. And it may very well be, but I think we have to start here first with these Black or predominantly African governments. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we have 5 minutes up to go. Excellency, one last question. Would you be able to give us, because I know a lot of our viewers or the followers that we're watching are requesting, where do they find this? Is it possible that you could give us, or that we will have access to that conference, so we do an official stream again on it to get the points clear? Is it possible?
Yeah, I would think that it's well, I'll check. I know it was streamed on YouTube. So I'm not sure if it was permanently put up on YouTube, but yeah, I will check that out for you. I would think that it is permanently available on the internet, and hopefully on YouTube. But this CARICOM Secretariat did stream it both on YouTube and on Facebook. And so that's another good thing about it. It was not a closed shop. It was a conference that was available to the masses of our people. So I'll check that out for you. And once I get the link, I'll send it to you.
Thank you very much. That will be very okay. I think, yes, it's available, but we need the official right to do it, and to do a very open session for our viewers to follow up with it, so we can analyze the speeches, put down our own, and then we come back to you in case of any questions or when the communique come up. So thank you. It was a very nice session. Any last thing that you want us to do? What do you want? What do you expect also the diaspora or the commons or the civil society to be doing to support this movement, apart from just what do you expect from us? I've already told you my support is in the media. The Pan-African Daily TV will do everything to follow up CARICOM and this initiative as even become one of your major partners in terms of communication that all of us are suffering from. But then what is it that, for instance, you would say, this is what we should be doing? Give us a homework.
Well, I think right now, just spreading the news is very important. And when the communique becomes available, getting that out, spreading that as widely as possible, so that everybody in the African world, in the Pan-African world, knows about it. As I said, there will be a time lag in terms of putting the institutional structure in place, but at least people should have the communique, which would be like the manifesto, and we should make sure that everybody gets that. What you're doing here too, spreading information about the Caribbean community, I think that is very useful. And letting people know that the Caribbean is not Jamaica, is not just Jamaica or whatever, but really educating our African people about the Caribbean community and what it is, and also this issue of reparations. I really think that the reparations campaign is a campaign that has the ability to bring us all together, to unite us in one common cause. And I would say that you should therefore target that reparations issue. We have the CARICOM Reparations Commission, and we also have the CARICOM Reparations Research Center. So that's a center that does research on reparations. It's located at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. And we have the CARICOM 10-point reparation plan. So I would say let us all get on board. Let us all connect with that reparations campaign. Also, the CARICOM Reparations Commission has the power to admit various organizations, to give them observer status in the CARICOM Reparations Commission. So I believe that that commission has the potential to become like a foundation or a center of gravity. I could see reparations organizations from all across the world applying to them for observer status, so that we just we keep building this reparations movement. So to me, everybody should pay attention to that high level event at the United Nations on the 22nd of November. But these are the things that I think we can do right now to push forward our agenda.
Thank you very much. I will reach out to you to get someone from this reparation commission to talk to us about it, so that we know how we can synergize it, because I think exactly that's one of the critical and most important. We have a lot of organizations that are doing that. Why don't we come under one? Because we're fighting for a common cause and a common agenda. That should even be another very stronghold and a point to unify us much stronger, particularly.
Okay.
Yes.
I can once you I can make that contact for you. Not a problem at all. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you again. And congratulations for this CARICOM. I'm so happy. And I think on behalf of all our viewers and our listeners, and also the Pan-African Daily TV team, we want to congratulate CARICOM and our brothers and sisters out there in the Caribbean that actually are watching. A lot of you. I wasn't able actually to follow up the chat or pick some of your questions, but if you do have some, address them in our WhatsApp chat or here. We're going to forward it over to His Excellency, and we'll be getting feedbacks directed to you. Yeah, so we thank you all for watching. We're going to be doing a rebroadcast of this particular event that took place there on the 7th of September. I think it's worth it for all of us to get engaged. When we posted it or we shared it on the Pan-African Daily TV blog page, Facebook page, a lot of people were still not really, but what is this all about? Is it still another kind of talk event and nothing is going to come up? When are we actually really going to unite? So I think the more noise we make about it, when we say noise, we're talking about quality noise this time. It's not like they kill one of us and we rally and we complain and we run the streets and everything goes back to normalcy. No, this kind of noise is quality noise. So I appreciate any one of you that is here to share this conversation extensively, and we're going to be rebroadcasting particularly this one, and also the summit, and also try to do some TikTok, for easy communication. So please, it is our time to get back to work. So the head of state, the government, they've done their job. Now it is for us to pick the species and run with it as much as we can. It is for all of us, and it is for the unity of all of us, and to our benefit as the people of African descendants and Africans worldwide. So thank you so much, sir, for being here. It has been a pleasure, and I look forward, yes, in any other opportunity to have to share this knowledge with you. So keep up the good work, and we all pray for you and your family, that you stay strong and healthy. And greetings to my sister from Ghana, tell her greetings from Nana Efwa. Yeah, probably I would like to have her also on the show. How does it this Ghanaian Caribbean concoction? You know, what is it when we visit you would find on the plate? Are we going to find some fufu and you know?
They look forward to seeing you in Barbados. You must come. Just come.
Of course, I would be there. I mean, I would have to visit the CARICOM secretariat, that's for sure. In as much as everything is clear, we have to establish even the head office in Ghana. You can already be sure Pan-African Daily is going to be a partner to this CARICOM movement, because it's one of the biggest things that we should be celebrating and dancing about for more than 500 years today. Now the Caribbean is making it happen. So thank you so much, Excellency. Good night to you. And we see us again anytime soon. Bye-bye. Bye. You are watching the... I do want to thank our viewers, our listeners, our followers. And I want to encourage us again, like I said, it is our turn. It's our turn to get on it. I didn't want to share this what do I want to say? I didn't want to share this in front of His Excellency, but you know what? A lot of people have sent questions to us on this. Yes, when is this supposed to happen? We need it immediately. These are things that we were waiting for. Oh, we just want to go back to the continent. Yes, what about the citizenship? Susan, please, can you address the issue of land? Come on. I know we're all anxious. We've been waiting. It has taken decades. I know. We all know it, right? But now look at it. It's an opportunity, the biggest opportunity. We said it yesterday with Dr. Williams Wallace. Let them, they do the talk, but we have to do the work. And so doing the work means all of us have to get engaged in this. I mean, a lot of questions would come, like you see. It wasn't the platform to start asking that question. Okay, and then what? Then what? He already addressed it before we even went to those questions to say, what about this? The two key questions that we keep receiving since yesterday was visa, free visa, and a flight, a direct flight from the continent to the Caribbean, and that he already answered it from the as if he knew. Of course, he's been on the radio shows around the Caribbean and talking to everyone on this historic event, and so plenty of people or interviewers have been asking the same question. Yeah, when? And yes, we have to exercise patience. He has said 6 months. 6 months doesn't mean that we sleep with it. On the Pan-African Daily, we'll be doing a review on this historic event at least once in a week to keep our minds focused, to keep our attention focused, and to not be distracted, not just to be another story and then we dump it. So it is left unto us how we want to develop it, how we want to build it, how we want to hold them accountable, how we want to push them to take those right steps. And I think they need our encouragement, just like we also need the expectation for them to do it, right? I mean, they would say, yeah, I mustn't do it. Must I do it? Or like you see the sluggishness and the laziness, and sometimes just the bad will and the bad mood to do it. So, but if something already is established like this, and we see it virtually, despite the pandemic, Uhuru Kenyatta said, no, I mean, we're not going to wait until this whole thing. We don't even know how long it's going to take. We have to keep to our commitment. So it's already that spirit. And that spirit is what we need to harness. That spirit is what we need to nurture. We need to grow this baby, CARICOM Africa. This is the new baby of the 21st decade that is connecting us. That's the one thing that we've been sitting here for the past 1 year and a couple of months, talking only about our unity, our connectivity, bringing the diaspora and the mainland. Today, it's happening. Do we just want to fall back again and wait some kind of blessings again? This is it. It is happening right in our eyes. But now it's for us, each and every one of us, to contribute, to take this baby, to nurture this baby, to feed it, and to let it roll. It's the same thing like me on the Pan-African Daily. I gave birth 2020, right? And to this baby that we are all nurturing here, the Pan-African Daily TV. So we have babies that we have now that we have to grow, train them, groom them, and give them up to the service of the Africans and Africans worldwide. So I think it is time for us not just to say people talk, because we're the talk. It is about time we talk and do. They've talked, let's do. So I appreciate each and every one of you sharing this extensively. Cut it how you want to do it. Pull down download the videos from our YouTube page and share it in your communities and keep repeating it. Remember, it is not just a one-time story. It has to be something that will go in our groups once every week, just like we'll be doing also on the Pan-African Daily. We have to touch ground on CARICOM. This is the 21st century decade. If you can think about you and I, when Dr. Marcus Garvey, and now we have Dr. Miller and Dr. Evandra sitting on that mega machine, they look at CARICOM also as the brother and the babies that we all have to nurture them. Africans, we don't nurture our things. We don't nurture our babies. People give birth and then we leave it and somebody adopt them. We bring the structures, we bring the ideas, and you see the European Union or some other person, foreigners, they come, they adopt, just like they go into our land and adopt our babies. It's the same thing. So a vision like this, a dream that is coming true, like CARICOM, is what I call our baby. And this baby, we should hold it so close to us. We are the mothers of the continent. Mama PM Mudley has fought, as you heard, right? To make this, to push out this baby. It is delivered. The baby is in the maternity. Now we all have to gather like the African people, bring gift, bring incantation. How do we want this baby to grow? And we pour all the blessings on this baby, and this baby will definitely grow. So we're not going to leave any other systems, just like any other system, to hijack this. We already had comments and we already had feedbacks. People that don't even want to hear about it, that something like this happened. Is it strange? Is it the first time? It is not new. So we shouldn't keep acting as, sometimes we leave our things slip out of our own hands. And then we keep blaming the creator, or we blame the enemies, or we blame whatever thing that we want to blame. No, African, cease your place and represent yourself. We're going to take the CARICOM like something has never happened. Forget about all this. Oh, no, it's another conspiracy. Oh, because the African Union is showing his face there. Or what good would come from Nazareth, right? No, please, you have heard him. He is a son. He is a Pan-African. He is, a father. He's an elder. He's an expert. And for them to have worked this thing behind the scenes and brought it to chew it and give it to us, it is our time to feed and nurture and grow this baby. Don't sit and blame anyone if you don't contribute in any way to build CARICOM. Don't. And don't point any finger. If you want to address anything about CARICOM, we want to ask you, what have you been doing on it? I'm doing my work. We have to do all our work together. Any ideas that you think that we can take it from them, even from the head of state, and make it work. They can only bring the ideas, we seize it. Whether it's in Kenya or in Ghana or in Cameroon is going to go, we have to build small babies of the CARICOM. And we take it and run with it, okay? Nobody owns CARICOM. It is the baby for the Africans worldwide. So I want to thank you. We're going to be coming live tomorrow. Really, I still really don't know if we're going to have a guest tomorrow. Who is the guest? The guest is still going to confirm, but you would get it in our press release. Saturday is a big day. Probably we'll have to touch on the issue of Guinea-Conakry again, to touch base with Al Wahab to find out what is it now. There's been some silence there. Is it just going to happen again like Chad, Mali, and now Guinea-Conakry, and something is not happening? We have to keep an eye on these things. It's not just a one-time news. It's a every day to follow up. So watch out tomorrow. We might be having Al Wahab again on this Guinea-Conakry coup d'etat and the way forward. What has been happening in this 1 week after we had that news. So we see ourselves tomorrow. Stay safe and stay tuned. Bye-bye. Good night. You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.